So Onyx says they're thrilled to announce a major Goliath testnet update that includes something like, for instance, expanded XCN bridging amongst many others. Now, nothing I say is financial advice, but if they're thrilled to announce this, I think I'll be pretty thrilled too. Maybe not to their extent, but a little bit, despite XCN being around 51 times lower than 25 cents, by the way, which I'll talk about very soon. But actually, if I take a look at this first real quick, Onyx, I think sometimes people underestimate what they're really trying to do when it comes to Goliath, because I feel like a lot of people treat it like, oh, Onyx is taking it as a joke, they're doing it for fun. But I feel like if they're treating something for fun or as a joke, they would not be trying to have some updates, or they're not going to be really working on it. That right there is usually reserved for projects that care, right? Even if I just take a look at it personally as an individual, if I make something and I'm constantly updating, I'm constantly talking about it, and also if I'm constantly trying to improve it, that would indicate that I care, right? If I didn't care, I would not be doing that. So when it comes to Onyx, I feel like what they're doing indicates that they do care about Goliath, because sure, people are saying that something like Stellar is just going to completely blow this out of the water, in a sense where the Stellar blockchain is already known for, being this pretty impressive thing within the space of global trade and finance. But when it comes to Goliath, it's attempting to be pretty cool, I suppose, but at the end of the day, it's just a layer one blockchain for the world of finance, right? In which case, people like to say, oh, that's a little bit kind of oversaturated. But I don't really necessarily agree with that too much, because if we take a look at the major players within this space as of right now, sure, we see Ripple, we see Stellar, we see XDC, we see something like ZBCN, we see Onyx. Like, it's not like there's so many famous competitors. There's just not that many that are that famous, in my opinion. So, okay, sure, maybe Goliath is not going to become the biggest thing of all time, but as long as it's like pretty popular, I think it's okay. I mean, there's many car brands out there. It's not only Toyota, for instance, right? It's not only Nissan. There's a lot. So when I take a look at Goliath, I feel like, why not? And as long as they still care about it, I think that's sometimes kind of what matters, right? The thought that counts. And let's just think about this. During a hypothetical altcoin season, what do people usually care about? They care about the story, they care about the narrative, and also they care about what something could be as opposed to what it already is. So as long as Onyx can just launch the mainnet of Goliath, I'm not saying keep it at the testnet, I'm not saying that. As long as they could just launch the mainnet before an altcoin season, if we ever even hypothetically see one, I think sometimes that could already be enough, because many projects out there, they haven't really done much in terms of the adoption, but we see them pretty popular. We see them in the top 30, 40, 50 and all this. So again, sometimes it's the story, it's the narrative. So as long as Onyx can launch Goliath in terms of the mainnet and say, oh, it could maybe become a competitor when it comes to Stellar, that sometimes could already be enough during a hypothetical altcoin season. But ultimately, we'll wait and see, which is why I'm still thinking about 25 cents when it comes to XCN. Now, it's not a requirement that I have to think about that. I could easily not think about 25 cents, but why do I have it on my mind, basically? Well, it's because, sure, again, we're like around 51 times lower than that, but at the same time as well, if let's say this space of global trade and finance had 30 or 40 different versions of like Onyx in terms of the popularity, then of course at 25 cents, the market cap at that point would be around 9 billion, considering the current circulating supply. That's completely out of the question. Off the table automatically. I wouldn't even think about that. But because there's less than 10 famous players within this space, I just don't feel like there's so much competition for something like Onyx. If let's say there is a hypothetical altcoin season, the reason being is because, again, like I mentioned before, Ripple, Stellar, XDC, Zebig, Onyx, XPR, Swiftcoin, that's 7. That's not 20, 30, no, right? And also, Onyx's closest competitor is Zebig, but that's like only one. Imagine if there was 30 or 40 archetypes of Zebig competing against Onyx. At that point, Onyx, no way, at 25 cents, hypothetically, in my perspective. But as long as that does not exist, as long as there's not that many, my thought is still maybe 25 cents, but we'll wait and see, right? This is just ultimately kind of my perception. But yeah, people like to say, oh, Onyx has so much competition. Well, okay, maybe it has some competitors, but it's not like it has so many in terms of the quantity. It has the quality in terms of the competition, but not the quantity. So if there was attention for this space, it just won't really be spread out too much. And here's the thing, historically, what have we seen? We've seen Ripple and Stellar have a lot of attention, right? However, we haven't seen like mainstream attention for alternatives beyond Stellar and Ripple within the space of global trade and finance in a major way. Of course, sure, number 3 is XDC. It's been that way for quite a while, but we haven't even seen XDC have that sort of mainstream attention, let alone something like Onyx, Cevic, XP, or Swiftcoin. We just haven't seen that. So what happens if that becomes a narrative during an altcoin season? What happens if the narrative becomes alternatives beyond Ripple and Stellar? Because sometimes narratives could form during an altcoin season. We just don't know, right? I mean, before the 2021 altcoin season, many people didn't really care about memes. Then suddenly they did after Dogecoin and Shiba Inu did their thing. So that's kind of my mindset. What happens if there is that narrative and things start trickling down from Ripple to Stellar, maybe to XDC, to Zebic, to Onyx, and so on? If that does happen, that's going to Sizzler time right there. Time to go to Red Lobster. That's the way to take a look at it. Even though, Red Lobster isn't really like a 5-star whatever, right? But, it's just an analogy. It's going to Sizzler, going to Applebee's, like that type of analogy. It's like just to symbolize a celebration, maybe. But we'll wait and see, right? Ultimately, when it comes to something like Onyx, if that, again, narrative does form, Onyx was waiting there. So it's in a position to maybe catch a wave. It doesn't have to chase it if that were to come. But that's contingent on the narrative happening, right? If the narrative of alternatives beyond Ripple and Stellar never come, then Onyx is just going to be there, not really doing much. But if it does come, it's waiting there, basically. It's waiting in the wings. That's the way you take a look at it. So this is why I'm still a fan. Now, I'm not only dollar cost averaging into Onyx, by the way, I'm also dollar cost averaging into Zebic and other projects too, even memes, like for instance in the case of Toshi. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I just want to ignore this, because the way you take a look at it is just in case. That's kind of my perception. It doesn't mean that anything could or would happen, but it's just a just in case type of scenario. It's like, for instance, do I swim a lot? No. However, I have swimming trunks just in case. I haven't swam in years, by the way. That's kind of the analogy that I have when it comes to Onyx. It's like my swimming trunks. I'll probably never use it, or rarely, if ever, from now on, but who knows? Maybe in case if there's that moment. That's the way I view it. So yeah, as of right now, still dollar cost averaging once a month. I don't have to, but I'm doing it anyways. That's kind of my mindset.